Okay.
Yeah, try that.
Okay, now can you hear me? Okay. All right. All right, I'm going to try one more thing then. All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes, you were audible.
Excellent. We got it fixed.
Good morning, Paula.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Oh, still recovering from too much sugar at Christmas. It's hard to do Christmas without doing all of my mother's desserts that she would make, though.
Right on. Yeah, I've eaten my weight in Chex Party Mix and
That's
and
my
peanut butter
daughter's
cookies.
favorite.
Yes.
Now, I don't do peanut butter cookies. Joe likes them, but they I think I had too many of them in elementary school. That was the two things that were on the lunch line in elementary school every day were Jell-O and peanut butter cookies. And then they would do something else, which was also equally disgusting. Oh, gosh, there goes my alarm. Just a moment.
Sure.
Oh, we watched the movie Soul last night. Have y'all seen that?
I have not yet, no.
Oh, it's wonderful. It is so good.
I'm looking forward to seeing that and also the Wonder Woman movie, which is out. So haven't seen either yet.
Christmas Eve night, our family did a group watch on Disney's Christmas Carol.
Mm-hmm.
It's too scary for 4-year-olds.
Oh, yeah, it is.
It was like a Tim Burton movie instead of a regular Christmas Carol. I thought it was wonderful, but it was a mistake to get all the kids involved.
Little much for them. I don't think I've seen that one. Is it a new one?
Yeah, it's stop action animation thing, computer generated animation.
Okay.
Jim Carrey stars as most of the parts.
Oh gosh.
But all of the ghosts are terrifying.
Okay, all right. I'll look forward to seeing that one. Hey folks, good to see Teresa and Meg and Tony.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, we've done this before church starts.
Yeah.
The regular Christmas Carol terrified me as a kid. The 60s one or whatever. Once you got to the Christmas Future,
Yeah.
no.
Well, I think they're all supposed to be scary, but this was nightmare scary.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, those two starving kids.
Yeah.
When he opens his
The Muppet version of the Ghost of Christmas Future is terrifying. Have you seen the Muppet version?
We love the Muppet version.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We watch it again and again just to watch the caroling rabbit get hit with a wreath, rewind and play.
We actually
So-
haven't watched that this year. We need to do that.
Yes.
So, we fast forward through the songs. We not crazy about
The singing
well,
is not great.
some of the songs are good actually, but some of them are fast forward worthy. So
Gonzo and what's the rat? The rat.
Rizzo.
Rizzo.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Do a great narration job on that one.
Gonzo's the best.
Gonzo is awesome.
Gonzo is one of my favorites. Absolutely. Well, I think our worship leaders are here. Tony, are you on? Tony's still muted.
Yeah, he's.
Rob is not available to do.
You're muted.
I'm getting Pop-Tarts out the toaster oven. Give me 1 second.
Oh, I'll give you a minute. Perfect. Yeah, Rob's not available to do closed captioning today, so they're on Christmas break at a cabin. So, man, I tell you, it was the AT&T outage yesterday and day before was surprising to me. We were completely without connection for about a day and a half.
Wow.
So why hasn't this been called terrorism yet? I wonder.
I know, right? It's
Have they? I mean, I figure they're waiting to see if it was a white guy.
That's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I think it is. So there's that. They found the RV. They found some pictures of it through Google Maps or something.
Yeah.
And it had been sent at this house. So they have an idea who it is. So they know at this point. But it's a shame that, the only time it's terrorism when it's a black and brown person.
Right. Yeah. It's surprising to me how fragile our infrastructure is,
Really? Are you surprised? Are you really surprised, Dave? Like these last 4 years? I mean, oh my God. I'm just worried about what's going to happen with all this stuff with this Russian hacking. Like the fact that they stopped the incoming transition team from having the briefings with the Pentagon is scary within itself.
It's nuts. It is nuts. Oh, thank you, Stacy. Stacy, appreciate you volunteering in the future to do closed captioning. Sure, I may take you up on that. So if we're ready, I think we're all here. You got your Pop-Tarts?
Yes, I'm trying to get this paint off my hands. I was painting my room. I got
no, all good. No, all good. This is real life. Let's see. Let me get the screen up here. All right. Ready when y'all are.
Oh Lord, let my soul rise up to meet you.
As the day rises to meet the sun, glory to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and will be forever. Amen.
Come, let us sing to the Lord. Let us shout for joy to the rock of our salvation.
Overwhelm us, Lord, with the weight of your glory.
Happy are they all who fear the Lord,
and who follow in his ways.
You shall eat the fruit of your labor.
Happiness and prosperity shall be yours.
Your wife shall be like a fruitful vine within your house.
Your children like olive shoots round about your table.
The man who fears the Lord
shall thus indeed be blessed.
The Lord bless you from Zion.
And may you see the prosperity of Jerusalem all the days of your life.
May you live to see your children's children.
May peace be upon Israel. Overwhelm us, Lord, with the weight of your glory.
Isaiah 65, 16 to 25. Then whoever invokes a blessing in the land shall bless by the Lord of faithfulness, and whoever takes an oath in the land shall swear by the Lord, by the God of faithfulness, because the former troubled people, no more shall the sound of weeping be heard in it, or the cry of distress. No more shall there be in it an infant that lives but a few days, or an old person who does not live out a lifetime. For one who dies at 100 years will be considered a youth, and one who falls short of 100 will be considered accursed. They shall build homes and inhabit them. They shall plant vineyards and eat their fruit. They shall not build and another inhabit. They shall not plant and another eat. For like the days of a tree shall the days of my people be, and my chosen shall long enjoy the work of their hands. They shall not labor in vain or bear children for calamity. For they shall be offspring blessed by the Lord, and their descendants as well. Before they call, I will answer. While they are yet speaking, I will hear. The wolf and the lamb shall feed together. The lion shall eat straw like the ox, but the serpent, its food shall be dust. They shall not hurt or destroy on all my holy mountain, says the Lord.
Since we don't have Megan with us, would someone else be willing to read Luke 4? Angela or Tony, would you, either of you?
Yeah, I'll be happy to. Luke 4:14 through 21. Then Jesus, filled with the power of the Spirit, returned to Galilee, and a report about him spread through all the surrounding country. He began to teach in their synagogues and was praised by everyone. When he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, he went to the synagogue on the Sabbath day, as was his custom. He stood up to read, and the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was given to him. He unrolled the scroll and found the place where it was written, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." And he rolled up the scroll, gave it back to the attendant, and sat down. The eyes of all in the synagogue were fixed on him. Then he began to say to them, "Today this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing." The word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God. Overwhelm us, Lord, with the weight of your glory.
20th century Quaker Thomas Kelly wrote, "Over the margins of life comes a whisper, a faint call, a premonition of richer living which we know we are passing by. We have hints that there is a way of life vastly richer and deeper than all this hurried existence, a life of unhurried serenity and peace and power. If only we could slip over into that center. If only we could find the silence, which is the source of sound."
So thank you all in leading us in worship. I'm grateful to be with you this morning. We'll go into a time of prayer. I'll get us started. And if you would like to lift up a name or a situation, and you're on Zoom, feel free to just speak it or type it into the chat. For those of you who are joining us on Facebook or YouTube, if you would like to lift up a prayer request, you can simply type it into the comments. Also, if you're joining us on one of those other platforms, please like or comment so we have a way to count your attendance with us. We're glad that you're joining us today. Let's go to God in prayer. Gracious and merciful God, in this time of waiting between Christmas and the new year, we come to you both with joy and with anxiety and sadness. We are especially mindful of the 14 million people in the United States who are in danger of losing their unemployment benefits, for all those who are anxious about finances, about survival, about the pandemic, about security. God, we ask that you give us a sense of peace that passes understanding. We ask that you give us resilient communities of love and mutual care that are able to weather the storms of this life. We lift up to you our nation in its political turmoil, recognizing that social change, powerful, deep change, is here. We ask you to help us navigate it and to be agents of grace in the midst of whatever new that's being born. We lift up to you names and people and situations that are dear to us, and I invite you to share prayer concerns and thanksgivings.
For my friend Travis and the loss of his nephew.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For Jenny Lawler.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For the family and friends of Beth Weatherall.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For 305 8th Street Group Home.
Lord, hear our prayer.
And for Nashville.
Lord, hear our prayer.
Praise that Raymond Keller is healthy and well.
Lord, hear our prayer.
Prayers for healing for my dad and for my sister Carson.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For Teresa's mother and her family.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For Claudia Petway's family.
Lord, hear our prayer.
With gratitude for Ruth's healing.
Lord, hear our prayer.
Gracious God, we are grateful that you hear both the prayers that we speak out loud and the prayers that we can't find words for. And we join with Jesus and the prayer he taught us. Holy One, our Mother and Father, let your name be revered. Let your kingdom come. Let your will be done on earth as it is in the heavens. Give us today the bread we need for today, and forgive our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. Save us from the time of trial and deliver us from evil. For yours is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, now and forever. Amen. As I said, I'm grateful to be with you today in this it's always sort of an odd time, the Sunday after Christmas. Usually, if you're at a large church, this is the Sunday that the associate pastor gets to preach because the senior pastor is exhausted from all the Christmas events. I wanted to talk a little bit today about we're coming upon the new time of New Year's resolutions and the symbolic weight of what a new year means. And I wanted to just start off by giving you all the two main ideas in what I'm going to share with you this morning. So if you don't remember anything else, you can remember these two. The first thing I want you to know is that human transformation is possible. Human transformation is possible. And the second thing I want you to know is your transformation doesn't have to happen according to anyone else's timeline, but your own. In fact, it can't. It has to happen according to your timeline. It's not dependent upon calendar dates. There's basically two camps when it comes to New Year's resolutions. Some people get very excited about New Year's resolutions and they look forward to making them. The new year is a time of promise and hope, and others roll their eyes about the whole idea. And I have to say, I probably identify more strongly with the eye-rolling camp than the excitement camp. Because sometimes New Year's resolutions are used to reinforce toxic ideas about body image and self-improvement. And without a system of behavior change in place, they can simply lead people to disappointment and disillusionment about setting goals or making changes in life. So in one sense, I'm firmly in the skeptic camp. But on the other hand, I have to acknowledge that we have a desire to set goals and improve our lives. That's a natural desire. And sometimes it's easier to do that during a time of a change in a season when we're mindful about the calendar. Often that's New Year's time, or oftentimes the beginning of school is a great time to make changes. And people are more likely to commit to change when we have one of these sort of markers in seasons. During this time of pandemic, I think it's important to emphasize again that if you're surviving, if you've made it so far, you're doing great. If you're just hanging in there, good for you. This year and these last years have already forced many of us to change in some ways that may be good, in some ways that are not good. I know that this last year I've been spending more time outside. I am very grateful for that. We've been more mindful about what we eat and how we eat because we want to minimize our grocery trips. So there's changes that have been forced upon us, some of which I am very grateful for. There's a fundamental concept important to Christian faith, and it's this: change is possible. In fact, change is not only possible, it's inevitable. We believe it's possible for people to be radically and deeply transformed. Wicked people can become loving. Aimless people can acquire a sense of purpose. Immature people can become mature and emotionally intelligent. People can change their direction in life. And if intentional change isn't possible, if we can't be transformed from the level of our habits and attitudes all the way down to our existential being, if change isn't possible, then frankly, all of this church and religion stuff is a waste of time. We believe change is possible. And when it comes to a belief in the possibility of human transformation, I think we have three resources. We have three things that are really going for us. The first resource is our theological tradition. The second resource is the modern science of human behavior. And the third resource is our imaginative realm. And when I say us, I mean particularly this community of people. And I'd have to bring it back to sci-fi and fantasy, because imagination is super important to change. So I want to kind of look at each of these three with you briefly. The first is our theological tradition. In Methodist tradition, we have a particular way of talking about transformation. So the change that most Christians talk about in the South is justifying grace. You have a conversion experience. You meet Jesus. You have a transcendent encounter with Christ. You commit your life, and you're changed. You're born again. Wesley said that's one kind of grace. That's justifying grace. That's not the whole Christian experience. That's just one piece, one part of it. And so much of evangelical Christianity has gotten hung up on that single conversion experience, but not everyone has one of these single powerful conversion experiences. For some of us, it's very gradual. It develops over time. So Wesley talked about that there's actually three different kinds or stages of grace. There's everything that comes before conversion or before a transcendent experience. That's called prevenient grace. Before you ever have a knowledge of God, God's at work in your life. So that's prevenient. It means it comes before any kind of conversion experience, any kind of spiritual experience. You're being set up from the beginning. And then after you have a conversion experience, there's sanctifying grace. So the idea is after you have a transcendent spiritual experience, an encounter with God, you're not done. God keeps working on you to form you into the image of Christ, to make you more like Jesus. So as you spend more time with God, you become braver in standing up to injustice. You become kinder, even when you want to be cruel. You become wiser through your life experiences. In fact, Wesley said it is possible to be made perfect in love in this life, and that you can get to a place where all of your actions would flow out of this deep love for God and for people and for the world. So I think that's an inspiring vision, and I think it's a corrective to a lot of the toxic Christianity that's out there. Now, some people have criticized Methodism and said, well, this is sort of a self-help Christianity, because there's this fundamental belief that growing deeper in your relationship with God should actually make a difference in how you live your life. But Wesley was very clear. This isn't self-improvement. This is God at work in your life, shaving off the rough corners over time. And when you practice your faith, when you do things like prayer and worship and meditation and acts of service and acts of justice, you're putting yourself in a position for God to shave off your rough corners. So salvation is a process. That's why Wesley didn't focus on just getting your soul right with God so you can go to heaven. This is about transforming your deepest identity. And the fact is, there's a change happening in your life, and God is simply inviting you to be an active participant in your own life. So that gets me to the second advantage we have when it comes to human transformation, and that's scientific study of human behavior, psychology. It turns out that Wesley was right about a lot of this stuff. Behavior change isn't just about setting goals. It's about shifting your sense of systems and your sense of self, about transforming the notion of who you are. So it is important when you're setting goals to set measurable goals. If I want to change my behavior, what I'm really after is to change my deepest identity, and I can get there by setting some goals. Now, maybe if I want to change myself, I may set a goal for the new year, like maybe I want to run 4 times a week instead of 3 or something like that. But that's not really what's motivating. What motivates me is that I want to be a healthier person, right? I want a different quality of life. I want to be the kind of person who runs 4 times a week. So the author of Atomic Habits says that there are these 3 layers to behavior change. The first layer just focuses on outcomes. And that's where most resolutions focus. I want to read this many books. I want to learn a new language. I want to exercise this many times a week. Those are important. And that's important if you want to create change, to set measurable goals. But a deeper layer is to look at systems. So what are the processes that maintain certain habits and prevent others? What in my environment triggers certain feelings and behaviors? Now, those can be personal things. Those can be social things. Some of those are within my control. Some of them may not be. Like, it's really hard to practice the piano if the television is always on in the same room. It's really hard for me to exercise if I'm not sleeping well because I'm doom scrolling on my phone until 1 a.m., right? So I have to look at myself as a set of systems. And if I want to change my habits, I change my systems. So there's an outcomes layer, there's a systems layer, and then there's an identity layer. And that's the deepest part that I want to change, right? If I want to think of myself differently, if I want to have a different identity and make behavior change possible, there's something about who I am that needs to change. So the author of Atomic Habits says there's a big difference. Like if you offer a cigarette to someone and they say, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit," or they say, "No thanks, I'm not a smoker." So the first case, you're thinking of yourself as a smoker who's trying to quit. And in the second, you've assumed the identity of a non-smoker. And this is key. Like when you're going to experience the inevitable disappointment, when you're going to fail in your goal and you're going to have frustration with change, because you will fail at some point, do you give up or do you try again? Well, it partially depends upon what kind of identity you have. Your identity change empowers you to make systems change and then to change your outcomes. So this is the way justification in Christianity is supposed to work. I say it's supposed to work because you and I both know it doesn't always work that way, especially with religious people. Oh, I've been saved and now I can act like a jackass. Well, let's bracket that for a moment. We'll come back to it, right? We have this theological tradition of sanctification. We have gobs of research into how human beings can actually intentionally change their behavior. That's all great. But now I want to dip into our imaginal world a bit because I think this is also important if we're going to be about the business of transformation. When I think about identity change and fresh starts, I go back to Doctor Who. I think about this concept of regeneration. Regeneration is Christian language for sanctification. We are continuously regenerated, regenesis. We are continuously made new again because God is in the business of renewal and regeneration. You are a different person today than you were yesterday. And you may have a sense because you have memories and stuff that you're the same person, but you are a different person. Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist monk, even says, this idea between birth and continuation, you're really a continuation because you are new all the time. God is in the business of renewal and regeneration. I really feel like this year has forced me to acknowledge what the doctor teaches. Regeneration can be painful. It can involve a feeling of loss. It can even involve a feeling of disappointment. But it's by embracing the possibility of regeneration that we begin to let the magic in. The inescapable reality is that each of us will change. We will become wiser and more loving, or we'll become more cruel and foolish. And I don't know really that the world has ever illustrated the lesson to us more clearly about the choice that we have and who we will become as individuals or as a species, right? We are all going to change, and we have a choice in the kinds of people that we will become. The amount of control we have may be limited, but we do have some control. And if we know we're going to change, and we have the knowledge of how to influence that change, then don't we also have an obligation to direct that change toward a wiser and more loving and more fruitful outcome? So if we let ourselves dream about the changes that are possible for ourselves and for the world, we're doing science fiction and fantasy. We're operating in a cosmic, biblical kind of language. We are imagining the future. So those are some pretty grand notions, but let me bring it down to some actionable steps, right? If your life is made up of your years and your years are made up of your days and your days are made up of your moments, then Wesley was right. We have limited time and energy, and we are being renewed every moment, although we don't know for how long. So if I want to change who I am, I ultimately have to look at my habits, and I have to try to construct a system around myself that supports the kind of person I want to be. That's one reason you guys are so important to me. One of the reasons I'm so important about intentional community. I can't be the kind of person I want to be for myself without help, without recruiting people to help me accomplish that. So I think inevitably, if we are pursuing changing ourselves or letting God change us to be more like Jesus, we are going to need people around us to help us do that. We're going to recruit people to help us make those changes. So human transformation is not only possible, it's inevitable. It's not tied to any calendar date, but your own. It's your own process. But if Jesus and John Wesley and behavioral science and Doctor Who point me in this direction, I believe it can be trusted and that it can be intentional. So I've talked for a little while, so I'm going to shut up and I'm going to let y'all respond.
I was wondering where you were going with with this, because it can take so many different routes. But I am firmly on the why wait until New Year's? You know you messed up the day. Start working on it. Because it also kind of gives you like a false deadline of being able to move into the action phase. You got I think there's one model that has 5 stages of change where you have pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, and then maintenance. Like when people wait for New Year's, it's like they go from pre-contemplation to action and maintenance.
Yeah.
And like they skip the other part where you think about it and prepare how you're doing it. And I think that's why so many New Year's resolutions fail. And I think it's been about maybe 15 to 20 years. I'm like, why do we do this? Like, there's no point in doing this. And honestly, when you think about regeneration, like we're regenerated every day.
Yeah.
So like we're renewed every day. So why wait to that day? Change, like go ahead and change now. It's interesting that people put such a heavy weight on just doing something on this one day. Last year in October, I realized I was fat. I needed to lose about 30 pounds because they were thinking about putting me on pre-diabetes medicine. I didn't say, let me wait to January 1st, and risk kidney failure before I do something about this. And I don't know, it just kind of sets up like I said, just really, really sometimes unachievable expectations. When you also started, I was thinking about, I thought you were going to do something around like social justice and like changing. I was thinking about our penal system. A friend of mine and I were talking yesterday, and we were talking about how people commit crimes and we just put them in jail. Like there's no rehabilitation.
Right.
So like we sit them there. If we let them out, they're no better, probably worse off than when they went in. So we only exacerbate the problems that we're trying to serve because we don't want to put money into rehabilitating people. And these are the same good Christians who don't want you to terminate a pregnancy, but they don't mind putting somebody in an electric chair and frying them or keeping people in cages like animals. So change is really important to the growth of us as a species. We have to be able to rehabilitate those people and put them back into our world, and that just doesn't happen.
Yeah, I appreciate that because I appreciate you connecting the personal to the social too, because I think you do need a theory of change. If you see yourself as a system, like you're saying, there's several stages. Like you have to think about what's going to support the change. We need to do the same thing in our social world, like thinking about like if we want people to be transformed, if we have a theory of change, then we can't just lock them in a cell for the next 20, 30 years. We have to think about how we want that person to be reformed. Yeah.
But not only that though, Dave, when you think about change, like I remember we had several conversations about this. You remember when Governor Northam, when it came out that he had like dressed in blackface like in the 80s. And I'm like, you'd be hard pressed to find a lot of white people who didn't do blackface in the 80s. So, but that happened. But he seems to have changed. We don't allow people to change. We don't allow their change to take hold. We want to hold something against you that you did 50 years ago as if you just did it yesterday. And it's really bad when you look at political stuff, and it's like, if we're changing and we're growing and we're renewing, you should allow people to hold and own that change that they're doing. One more thing, and then I'm done. One of the last sermons that you did before the COVID apocalypse, you were talking about, you got this feeling, a sense that something's being birthed. Do you remember that?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Boy, we had no idea what was coming.
Right. Serious labor pains, right?
yeah, the whole thing with the labor pains. And, and we are really like, we're crowning now. It's like, we don't know what's going to happen, but that has been resonating with me like for the last few months. And the changes that we have gone through, the way that we have adapted to this new reality that we're in. And I just wanted to let you know that I remembered you saying that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Other thoughts, reflections, responses? Sometimes I just go ahead.
I said, don't everybody speak at one time?
Sometimes I let the silence go until it gets just a little too uncomfortable.
Okay, well, I'll talk because I'm a New Year's Eve baby, so I have a very, very different perspective than Tony on this. I wouldn't be at St. Junia if it weren't for New Year's resolutions. In 2013, I was like, okay, this is the year I'm going to find a church that aligns with my values. But I didn't say, okay, in 2013, I'm going to become like a super holy person or anything like that. It was a small, doable change, but we went around to churches for, I didn't expect that instant change. And I think that is part of the reason that, because I'm a New Year's baby, like, it's a new year for the world, but it's also a new trip around the sun for me. And so it's just a time for me to be like, okay, what was this last year like? Although we've been thinking about 2020 all year.
Yes.
but like, usually I can be like, okay, how did I spend last year? How do I want to change? What kind of different person do I want to be going forward? So I do think that for some of us, there can be value in it. But I do think also, if you're like, new year, new me, I'm going to be a different person, I'm going to come out of my chrysalis. Well, we're not butterflies. Sorry. And so it, change is gradual for us. And I take a lot of issue with the secret kind of name it and claim it kinds of things. Well, I'm not going to get sick because I have declared I'm not going to get sick. And you laugh, but I actually had someone tell me that, oh, well, the people who are getting COVID are the ones who are most worried about it, so must be law of attraction. And I was just like,
right. No, I laugh to keep from crying. Right.
Yeah, that was one of those moments where I did this number so that he could not see my reaction. But I think that the point in making any change, is to be honest with ourselves and see where we are and where we want to be and what is achievable. And this year has shown us some of the worst of humanity, but it's also shown us, we have this vaccine that is on completely new science in such a short amount of time. Like, my mind is blown at what we actually have been able to accomplish too.
Sure.
So, part of me is just like, man, people did not learn the lessons, but some people have really transformed in this year, and it may stick for some of us, and for some of us it won't stick, clearly. But I just recently read How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi.
Yes.
And he, oh my gosh, that's such a good book. And he talks about, because he got stage 4 colon cancer, and he talks about approaching racism. And I think this could apply to like lots of society's ills too, but approaching racism as, yes, we have a disease and it's terminal, and the odds are really not in our favor, but he survived it, and he was one of those 12% who make it to the next, who go into remission because he was at such an advanced stage. He's like, yes, we have this disease, it's terminal, yes, we can fight it, yes, it may kill us, but if we give up on it, it will kill us.
Right.
We can't just say, well, it's too bad, we're going to die, because then we will die. Then our society will collapse. So we have to fight it. So anyway, that's a whole bunch of different thoughts. But
I appreciate you bringing that in, and also sharing your personal experience. I remember you talking about how, making the decision to find a community that aligned with your values that is a life-changing kind of decision. It totally is. Yeah. Well, and I think you brought up cancer as well, and I know that Tony and others, folks who've been cancer survivors, often mark that calendar date, like it's been this many years. Like this is you think about that change. It's an important change that's tied to a calendar date for you also. Absolutely.
Hey, Teresa, I wanted to tell you that it's those new year, new me people who really get on my nerves. Like they get on my nerves. And you ain't got to claim the disease will claim you. You don't even have to worry about it.
That's right. I want to make sure that Stacy had her hand up, and I made her a panelist. So I hope you can, if you still have that capability, Stacy, if you can speak.
Oh, I was just in dealing with tough stuff. And transformation can be tough stuff. Sometimes I struggle with boundaries, and figuring out, kind of what's a safe boundary, right? And didn't know if anybody kind of had any thoughts on that. And a couple of examples is, when I'm working with. And working is I think the right verb, because it's active and it's intentional and you want an outcome. When working with people who I'm related to, or people who I am, employed with, and we're trying to be more inclusive or make a change or more productive or whatever. A lot of times that's, when I'm not, for what I do for a living, and a lot of times because my family, I'm not a maintainer. I'm looking to be a change agent. And I find it's incredible. Was it Paul's cohort Barabbas that, being that very, very positive and enthusiastic person, and that might be in the face of racism, ageism, you're too old to, right, ... whatever intimidation that might be, to say, not be naive, but say, wow, this is exciting. This is good. And just to remind people, but sometimes I also need that reminder too, because it can all get heavy, that the amazing power of community to help us, and that right community. And anyway, I didn't know that the whole, and Teresa talking about maybe sometimes realizing that you're not in the right community. And to me, that's a boundary somewhat too, to kind of figure out where we should be and with whom and how to aid us in that transformation, because God does not want us to be alone. And I didn't know if there were any maybe thoughts around that.
Yeah. Other thoughts about encouragement and support from community and making change?
Your community is very important when it comes to making change. I think about people who struggle with substance abuse. Like, you have to literally get out of the community that you're in order to successfully implement that. Like, you can't be hanging around with people that doing whatever your drug of choice is, thinking you're gonna be able to stop. It's kind of like smoking. I started smoking because I hung out with people. I worked in retail, and so everybody who smoked got these extra little breaks to just go outside on the loading dock and start smoking. So I'd go out there with them, and next thing you know, I'm like bumming cigarettes, and then next thing you know, you feel like a bum, so you start buying them. And 10 years later, you're like, I can't keep doing this, So community is very important when it comes to change, whether they're positive changes or not so positive changes. We are influenced by our environment. It's the whole thing with nature versus nurture. So Stacey's right. The community is very, very important as to how you deal with things like that.
I used to take secondhand smoke breaks when I worked in retail, because I was like, it is not fair that you get to go out
Right on.
Yeah, in that book Boundaries, the Henry Cloud book, that's one of the things he says is, you know, and I'm sure this is just common knowledge, the reason people can't leave abusive environments is because we are so wired for community that we've got to have community. And so we will stay in bad environments if we don't have something to replace it. And it's very important to change who we're around.
That may be one reason rabid Trump supporters still support Trump. They've got a community where they feel comfortable, and even though they may not be crazy about him, they don't want to lose the community.
Right. There's a social cost to changing. Yeah, absolutely.
There's also that very tricky situation where a person will leave an abusive relationship, but because they don't know anything better, they fall back into another abusive relationship. Or they're like, well, this abusive relationship isn't giving me what the small, tiny good things that I did get from it, so I'm leaving it and going back. We see that with drug abuse, with addiction. We're seeing it in a weird political way with the exodus of conservatives on social media to Parler and things like that. But I mean, it's the same thing as leaving your idiot asshole abusive boyfriend and getting married to an abuser, or leaving an abusive household and, you know, marrying an abuser or becoming an abuser.
Yeah, that's true. I'm going to tag on a couple of things that folks have mentioned. The community aspect. Thich Nhat Hanh, Buddhist monk. I don't know if he came up with this or if this is a Buddhist saying, but the next Buddha will be a Sangha, which is like saying the next Jesus will be a church. So the idea is that this individual that we aspire to be is actually embodied in a community, which I thought is a very powerful way of talking about incarnation, and that's that idea of support that we need around us to live up to our ideals. And the other is I was connecting back to what Chris said and what Teresa said about the idea of abusive relationships, one of which is like this, you know, systemic racism and systemic injustice that we see in our society. That if you're going to even say I'm going to be anti-racist, or I'm going to be anti-patriarchal, is to make quite a claim about our ability to change, right? I mean, to change not only yourself, but also have an influence beyond yourself. We're claiming quite a bit of power when we say that kind of stuff. So again, I'm not sure I can claim that myself, but I can do it with a community.
Yeah. And I guess I was looking for positive examples, guys. All right. The abuse and the drug and smoking. But I think that there's some positive examples out there, guys. I'm poking you. Because, you know, I think that it's something that's been of interest to me is how do people like Joe Biden, Rosa Parks, John Lewis. I don't know if you guys saw recently last week, and I'm going to say their name wrong. Graetz, Jeannie Gratz. You know the Gratz. They're Lutherans. You know, a lot of Lutherans came from outside the Southeast, and they came down to the Southeast and participated in different civil rights justice moments, right? And some moved back and some stayed. And the Gratz were a married couple who did that in Montgomery, and they recently passed away. But they had their church, they had their home bombed, and different acts of violence. And they're a white couple. And I guess what I've been kind of mulling on this year is we've heard a lot about the stories, of course, the tragic stories of like the Malcolm X's and the MLKs who were killed or died before their time. But then there's a lot of people who also stuck their necks out, who lived until they were 70s and 80s and died of cancer in old age, right? And who are those people? And how are we, recognizing that there are those people who did what they are saying God told them to do, and they lived to be 90 years old and had their life threatened in very serious ways. So I think that there's, and they lived in community. And they lived in community. So one was this married couple, and I was trying to figure, GRAETZ was written up in the Montgomery Advertiser about them recently, and others. So how do you live and making the world a better place, and make that community choices,
right.
And they're real. I guess that's what I was, and this isn't a Martin Luther thing from hundreds of years ago, but this is a today.
Right. The saints that are around us, because you're talking, I'm thinking of like Shelley and Jim Douglas here in Birmingham, who are Catholic folks who really formed a community around themselves and their justice work. But there's the real life saints of people who create community around them because they continue to live exemplary lives.
Yeah, and kind of there's I think it's Independent Presbyterian Church. There's a lady, Evelyn, who runs their STAIR program, which is a literacy program for second graders in the Birmingham public school system. And it's tough work, because that's a really hard community to stay engaged, because every day those kids and their people taking care of them are having struggles just to get them in to continue focus on learning when you also have hunger and other issues.
Right. So
just trying to figure out the power of finding a right community can also be the power of a long fulfilling life. Life is life bringing.
Thank you for that. Absolutely. Yeah.
Another challenge is knowing when to try to be a change agent in your community versus when to find another one. And our social networks are complicated. So the truth is, many of us are probably members of communities who are attempting to make changes versus kind of tribes that are keeping us sane because the views are already similar. And trying to find the right mix is, I think, sometimes a tough boundary.
Yes.
And it's a personal one, because some people have to leave a community because it's too much for them, but some people can stay and be change agents. And I think that one thing that is important is for us to have grace for people who are, like, some of us have to leave. This environment is way too toxic for me. I have to go. I have whatever. But just because I have to go doesn't mean that it does not benefit me for someone else to stay and try to change it. And I think that is one thing that we sometimes miss, because we expect everyone to be like ourselves. And it's okay if someone wants, obviously we can talk about what is the wisest way to help make changes and whether or not you're compromising yourself or whatever. But sometimes people can change their family, and sometimes people have to leave their family, and both are okay. They're both hard decisions.
Yes.
But it's okay to be yourself. So two others. So it's not just civil rights, but I remember. So I've been trying to do more biographies this year, and two that stuck out to me are Jim Henson. Muppets.
Yeah.
Because you guys are talking about Chris, and there's a really neat. I listen to podcasts or on tape Jim Henson, and then also Carrie Fisher. She did a one woman thing called Wishful Drinking. And Jim Henson's from Mississippi, not a bastion of liberalism typically. And here was this little male boy who wanted to play with dolls and puppets, and his parents let him. And I don't think that was just one of my takeaways, was knowing in the South, and when he grew up, the idea of a boy playing with dolls,
right,
that was not a gender appropriate. And so there was an allowance of his parents letting him grow into that. And Carrie Fisher is what you would call now, what is it, bipolar? And she and her mother figured out their relationship, and she, I think, has helped in the mental health realms, just her writing and her explaining her experience so that we could better understand some aspects to that disorder. So those special family relationships or other relationships that just let you be who you are very precious.
Yeah.
And Teresa, I agree completely about, there are times when you need to leave a community, and there are times when you can stay and change it. I mean, so many of the people who made a difference in the 60s were Southerners who decided to stay here and fight for civil rights. On the other hand, there's a danger, I think, when you decide to stay in some communities where you slowly allow that community to change you instead of you changing the community. It's that frog in the kettle effect, where in order to maintain community relations, you speak out less and you're less prone to resist.
Right. And that's kind of what we see in the church right now. Absolutely. Well, we're coming up on 11 o'clock, and we don't have to like punch the clock and say we can only talk about it this long, but I want to honor people's time. Any last words before we move towards closing our liturgy? Well, I want to say as I mentioned during my message, I'm grateful for you all and for the way that you support me in being the kind of person I'm trying to become. And I hope that this community does the same thing for you as well. Let's see, Tony, I'm going to bring the liturgy back up if you and Teresa can help us close out.
Lord, with your coming, our lives have a greater demand placed upon them. Help us learn the art of active, consistent service while maintaining enough silent spaces to hear your call. Amen.
May the peace of the Lord Christ go with you, wherever he may send you. May he guide you through the wilderness, protect you through the storm. May he bring you home rejoicing at the wonders he has shown you. May he bring you home rejoicing once again into our doors.
Amen. Thank you all for being here for worship today. I'm going to ask the folks on the Zoom call to stay just a minute more, but I'm going to end the stream. So those of you who are on Facebook or YouTube, thank you for joining us today. If you don't mind liking or commenting, just so we have a record of your being here with us. Thanks so much.